Hello, friends. Welcome to Magic, Creativity, and Life. Interesting conversations with interesting people. My name is Thorn Coyle, and I am your host. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to my Patreon supporters for paying for the recording and captioning of this series. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Magic, Creativity, and Life. My name is Thorn Coyle, and today I'm here with Adam Tex Davis. He is a screenwriter, producer, filmmaker, co-founder of Atomic Entertainment, and has worked in the film industry for over 20 years. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I ask every guest to start with, what are your creative roots? What were some of your early forms of creative expression?
My earliest, let's see. Well, I tell this story sometimes. I got into movies pretty early, and I loved, like I think it was like 7 or 8 when Star Wars came out, and
Right.
I saw that in the theater, and I am not alone in having that movie blow my mind. But the thing that I did that I think was different than a lot of kids my age is when I got home from the theater, I just kept telling myself the story over and over again. And then I sat down and I wrote the movie from memory in my own words and described everything that I remember happening and told basically like rewrote the movie, but, just, like a journal and, filled up the entire notepad. And I remember my parents were like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I was like, I figured everybody was doing that, and they were like, "No, why would we sit and write the movie?" And I think early on I realized, yeah, I kind of loved writing. I loved just using my words and writing things down. And one of the things that happened for me is, it's like 7th grade in middle school. There was a statewide competition, a writing competition, like a creative writing competition. And they decided to have everybody enter it. It was mandatory. So if every 7th grader had to write a story to enter into this competition. And most
Wow.
kids, they were groaning. Oh, I can't believe we have to do this. And I was excited. So I, thought of a crazy story, a sci-fi thing, blah, blah, blah. And I wrote this story and turned it in and, don't think anything of it. And months later, we're gathered in the auditorium and we don't even know why. And they announced that I won the contest. And okay, great. I go up and I get an award and there's people from the contest. I had no idea. And then in 8th grade, they did the same thing. The competition came around again and this was in New Jersey. And I don't even remember the name of the competition, but they came around again, and the teacher said, "Okay, everybody needs to write a story." And then he said, "But Adam, you won last year. I know you like to write. You could sit this one out. You don't have to do it." And I was like, "What? No, I want to do it." And I thought of a new story, and I entered a new story, and I won again.
Wow.
And that made me realize, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I have a good, maybe I have a gift for telling a story. So
That's
really
amazing.
that started my writing journey.
Wow. So did you have support from your family or friends around this?
Friends, no. Friends, growing up small town Jersey, it's like, wait, you want to sit home and write? No, they were not supportive. My parents were very supportive. My mom, especially. In fact, while I was still in high school, she signed me up for a thing. There was a thing called the Children's Literature Workshop or something, and it was you apply, you write something, and then if they accept you, you work one-on-one with a published children's author, and they help your writing. And
wow,
they would give me assignments, like they'd send me a picture of just a random a scene. And they would say, "Can you take that scene and turn it into a story?" So I would do stuff like that, and that was actually stuff that I used to apply to college, to NYU, and I got in not because I got into the film program, but I didn't get in through making a movie or a film. I got in through my writing.
Interesting. So you went to NYU for screenwriting then?
I went more for, I'd say, directing
Uh,
than screenwriting. Like I took screenwriting courses, but that felt so uh, that felt so far away. Like there was no, like writing a feature film. So I was thinking in terms of short things,
right.
So the other story I tell is, my I guess my approach to writing, um, I call it bad journalism.
Hmm.
And by that, I mean, for a while, I thought, I loved Stephen King growing up. I thought maybe I would write horror stories. Then
Yeah.
I got really into journalism, and I got on the paper, and my high school had a great school newspaper. And I got on the paper right away as a freshman, and I worked my way up. And then I was like managing editor by senior year, and I was loving writing articles, except I had this nasty habit that if the story wasn't good enough, I would like embellish it a little bit, quote myself as an unnamed source. I would make it a little better, and that's bad journalism. You're not supposed to do that. So I realized I had enough journalistic integrity to know that I didn't have enough journalistic integrity.
Right.
And so I was like, how can I transition? What's the version that I could do that? And it's like, oh, screenwriting is a perfect way to use bad journalism. You take a kernel of something that's real, and then
Yes.
you embellish it, and you make it funnier and bigger and better, and you make the bad guy worse, and you make the good guys better, and you make and yeah. So that's how I kind of got into this idea of screenwriting or writing for movies. But at film school, it's shorts, so I was thinking in terms of short form. So I got into film school, and I did I made a short film, and that was actually a catalyst for me having a career, because my short film won a bunch of festivals and went out. Somebody brought it out to Los Angeles, and then I was able to get a manager, and from there an agent, and then by that point I was writing feature scripts.
That's amazing. So you've also worked in television. Have you worked in writers' rooms, or have you mostly done feature full length scripts?
Mostly feature scripts, but then what happened was, yeah, the film business. I mean, look, I had a movie. I had several movies get made, and things were going great. I was getting hired a lot to do rewrites and punch ups and things like that. And I sold a few, original ideas. I had a couple of movies get made. I had a made for cable, made for TV cable movie get made. I had Just Friends was my big thing with, a romantic comedy that starring Ryan Reynolds and Anna Faris. So things were going well, and I was getting hired to do rewrites and punch ups and stuff. And then around 2008, there was a strike, and the business contracted a lot, and it became very hard to get any writing work. I had 3 projects going into the strike. Coming out of it, all of them were dead. Executives were fired. One company was no longer. So it was like, oh no. So yeah, I kind of got into television. And at first I was doing scripted TV, where I would come up with an idea and I would pitch it and I would sell it, and then I would write the pilot. So I was kind of by myself, and
Right.
it was my show. But they didn't go beyond the pilot stage. They never got, to the point where they're making the show.
Right.
Then, a friend of mine, who's now my business partner at Atomic, a man named Jerry Colbert, who I went to film school with, and we had sort of parallel careers. He was doing more television, and I was doing film. He was working on a quote unquote reality show that needed a writer. And we were at a party, and he told me about the show, and it happened to be a job show, and it was the job that my father did for a living. It was about meat purveyors who sell
Wow.
meat to restaurants. And in fact, I had to, thank God, my father had retired recently. Otherwise, I wouldn't probably want to work on the show, because it was a conflict of interest, because it was a rival company. But yeah, so I worked on this meat show with Jerry, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And then from there, we actually, I said to him, I said, this is great, but I really think we should pitch our own shows. And then we were able to get the show Brain Games for National Geographic Channel, and that took off for us. And that did have a writer's room, but I was in charge of it,
Right.
because I had a lot of experience. I mean, in a way, I've worked my way backwards. So it's like writing a movie is really, hard and involved and all that. Writing a TV show is less than writing a movie. Uh, Doing a podcast is less than doing a TV show. So every,
Right.
as I've progressed, it's easier for me because I've had the experience of doing the bigger, more involved thing first.
What what do you find the effects on your creative process are from working more in isolation on a big project to working more collaboratively? Does your creative process change?
At every turn, it's collaborative. The film business is always collaborative. It might start with you alone in a dark room in your underwear writing, but eventually, once it sees the light of day, there's other people.
Yeah.
Whether it's my manager giving me thoughts and notes, whether it's the studio executive, if you're fortunate enough to have your script go to the next, the level. If it gets bought, they're going to give you notes. Then they're going to hire a director, and the director is going to have thoughts. Then you're going to get a cast, and now you're going to rewrite the script to fit your cast a little bit more. So at every turn, there's collaboration. The only time you really are alone in isolation is when you're beginning.
Hmm.
And then as far as like a TV show or something, yeah, I mean, you're collaborating with other people. I've been fortunate enough to be like, I'm the guy that they're submitting their scripts to. So then I would give the notes, or I would do a rewrite punch up on their script. And I'm doing a lot of that now with the scripted podcasts and stuff that I do. I have writers that submit their scripts, and then I do the final punch up, and that's what gets recorded. Yeah, but at every turn, you are collaborating.
Yeah.
You know,
That's very different from my process. My writing is very much done in isolation until it goes to an editor or a first reader, right? So it's a very different process, and that's interesting to me. And the other thing listening to you brings up for me is the role of ego in creativity and collaboration, right? Because when everyone needs a certain amount of ego, right? Healthy ego to create, to put their work out there in the world, to make a living, do all the things we do as human beings, right? But in collaboration, especially the kind of collaboration you're talking about, it feels like you also need to let your attachment to things go by the wayside, right? It sounds like you need to keep your ego in balance. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts about that for people.
sure. Well, here's the thing. It's like you have to have enough of an ego and enough of, like, you have to grow that rhinoceros skin, that impenetrable skin that will allow you to hear no a lot, to have people critique your stuff, to say this isn't good, or that they're not going to buy it. You have to be able to survive that.
Yes.
But at the same time, you also, you can't be one of these people, at least I don't think professionally, where you fight everything, and you have to pick your battles. You have to
Yeah.
know when to argue and when to step back. And look, that was all stuff I had to learn. I mean, in the beginning, I was picking every battle, and I'd had my manager and my agent and other people like, hey, ease up a little bit. Like, let the producer let them have one, and then you fight for that. But also, you get better at arguing your point and trying to make their idea work. And if you can't make it work, you show them and say, look, I tried your idea and it just didn't work. But like, here's what I did. What do you think? And then they, sometimes I've won arguments that way by, or creative differences, they call it. But it's like, you can show like, hey, or maybe there's some, combination of what they brought in and you brought in. But yeah, you have to have the healthy ego to survive this business, because
Yeah.
it's very easy to just feel like, okay, I'm, never mind. It chewed me up, spit me out. Like there was an example I use. I had a movie that I wrote, and it had a very specific, the lead actor was supposed to be this big, heavy set guy who, over the course of the movie, will like lose some weight and get in shape. But we had an actor who was perfect for that part, and he was like a schlubby guy at first, and then he becomes this better person. but he's also losing his mind, and I won't get into the whole details. But the point is, it was a cool thing that I thought it was really cool, and we had the perfect actor for it. And then that actor had to go do he got hired for a TV show, so he was out, and they came back to me with a new guy that they wanted to use who was not that character at all. In fact, was like a fairly good-looking, skinny guy, and I was like, "Wait, what?" It's like you're messing with the whole idea of the movie, and they were like, "No, I think it'll be better." And I was like, I can't imagine it being better. And I remember calling my agent and saying, what do I do? And he says, well, look, you got three choices. You could say, no, I'm not going to rewrite the movie for this new actor. And you walk away and the movie goes nowhere and it's done. You could say, no, I'm not going to do it. And they go and they hire some kid out of film school. They don't have a lot of money. It was an indie movie. They can hire somebody to just rewrite it for you. And then, that's the movie. Or you go back there and you say, all right, fine, I'll give it a shot. What do you want to do? And I was like, all right, so basically there's one choice. And I went back to
Yeah.
all right, let's see if we can make this work. And, I think we did, but unfortunately the movie, I don't know, it's sitting on a shelf. It got made,
Yeah.
but, it never came out. So
You got paid, but no one ever saw it.
yeah, some people saw it in film festivals. It was pirated when it was overseas. I know Amazon Prime had it for a second. It's just like one of these weird stories. For a while, it was like the low point. And again, that's the ego. That's where you have to have the ego to survive stuff like that. And say, look, I'm going to write lots of things. This was one thing I wrote, and it's just on my timeline, and
yeah.
You move past it and you write more and you do other stuff.
It's the throw 100 pots school of creativity rather than trying to perfect a single pot, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I have that conversation with friends a lot where they've written something and then they get like a rejection, so they go home and tinker on it, and now they're trying it again. And maybe it gets rejected again, or people don't want to look at it again. And I was like, you got to move on. Put it down.
Yep.
It exists. It's there. You could put it down and you can do other things and you could always revisit it, but stop. If you're just spinning your wheels on the same project, like, you might not go anywhere. So yeah, your pots, metaphor works.
Yeah. Years ago when I first tried my hand at writing fiction, I would labor over a single short story, for like a year, which is ridiculous. And it would just kill my creative voice. It killed the enjoyment. And of course, those stories were never going to sell, and I would have been better off writing 10 more short stories.
Right.
It would have taught me more about craft. It would have taught me more about letting go, the letting go process you're talking about. It would have taught me more about how to deal with ego, I think.
Yeah, but at the same time, you now look back and you realize, okay, so it did teach you. It just took longer.
It just took a lot longer. That's true. So as far as what to fight for and what to let go, is there some internal process you have that helps you with discernment? Or is it just random in the moment? You have to make a decision?
I think you have to weigh, like everything you write, or, it's like there's a reason you wrote it. There's like, what are you trying to say? What's important to you? And then how, in the scheme of things, how much of what they're arguing to change or whatever, how much does it affect everything? And,
Yeah.
a lot of times, people, there are people that will argue every single point. And then, I've gotten to the point where, it's like, okay, does this affect the big picture? Does this scene matter so much that, they say this or that? Now, granted, I've been in the situation where I've been overruled, where I know I was right. And then after it came out or whatever, and it's like, I've had them come up to me, I guess you were right. You know what? It was better the way it was. Yeah, I know. So you got to eat that sometimes. That will happen. And then other times you'll win and maybe you were wrong, and then other times you win and it turns out, oh, thank God that they saw it your way. Look, the very first script I ever sold. I'll tell a story. Unfortunately, it's got a person at the center of it that's not a good person. But I did sell my very first script. Was bought by Harvey Weinstein
Oh my
at
gosh.
Miramax. Yes, I apologize. Trigger warning. But it was a script I wrote that was based on my bad journalism, where I wound up on spring break with my parents, and I was a year out of school, out of college, and my parents had a timeshare in Cancun, and they invited me and my girlfriend and my brother and his girlfriend, and we were all going to go. And then my brother couldn't get off work, and so they weren't going. And then my girlfriend couldn't get off work, and so she wasn't going. And my parents were like, "Are you still going to come with us, right?" And I was like, "You know what? I'm right out of school. Why not? I'll just go. It'll be fun." And we show up, and it's like, "Welcome, spring breakers." And the whole hotel, everything is just filled with kids partying. And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm on spring break with my parents." So I bought a notebook, and I just jotted down every stupid thing that happened. And I tried to manipulate as many stupid things as possible, get my mom in a foam party at Senor Frog's, whatever I could do to, my dad smoking weed in a hot tub with the frat boys, like anything I could manipulate or record that would be fun for a movie. So I write this movie. It's called Sunburned, and it's about a kid who combines his family vacation in order to go on spring break because he can't afford it, in order to pursue the girl he's in love with. And it's kind of like a teen sex comedy, American Pie-ish, and
Yeah.
very funny, I thought. And my management and agent, they loved it, and we went out with it, and it didn't sell. So I was bummed. And I actually started writing Just Friends in the aftermath of that not selling. But then I get a call. You're not going to believe this. Some people at Miramax, they got a hold of your script. They were reading it. They were laughing. And Harvey said, "What's everybody laughing at?" Grabbed the script and read it and laughed. And they couldn't believe he's laughing. He never laughs at anything. And he said, "I want this. I'm buying this. Get me this kid. Bring him in here." And next thing I know, I'm in a meeting with Harvey Weinstein. And, I'm like nervous. I mean, and this is before all the stuff came out.
Yeah.
But, and he is the every bit the character and the monster that you hear, and, loud and crazy. And he says to me, he goes, "All right, I like your script, but kids, they hate their parents. So I want to lose the parents." And I was just like, "It's a movie about a kid who goes on spring break with his parents. If you lose the parents, it's a movie about a kid who goes on spring break." And I know, it'll be great. And I was just like, I don't know what does that mean? So
Right.
I left, and he's like, "If you do it though, I'll buy it." So I have to just, say I'll do it. And then I go out, and then I'm like, what do I do? It's my first sale potentially, but he's destroyed the whole movie. So
Yeah.
I was able to complain enough to the, whatever, and we were able to get the parents back into the movie, but like as a B story or a C story. And he had some cockamamie ideas, and honestly, yeah, it didn't work. It didn't get made, but I got paid. So yeah, it was an interesting, but it was like the very first, yeah, it's like that typical horror story. The very first thing you sell is a story about this, and the guy wants to immediately just change it and ruin it. So
Well, including taking out all the comedy, right? The comedy is the juxtaposition of the kid and his parents.
I know. It was weird. And he has this friend who gets all these girls, and he wanted the guy to show up and meet this friend of his who's like a guru of getting girls. It was actually disgusting, to be honest. And like, in light of everything that's come out, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, why not? I get it.
You get it now.
Yeah. But and here's a pro tip. Like, you go a lot by feeling, right? So it's like, when the script didn't sell, I was feeling really crappy because we were so high on that this was going to sell. And I remember thinking, like, when else have I felt this crappy? And I was like, oh, I know. When I was in the friend zone with this girl I was in love with in college for 2 years, and she had a boyfriend, but I was her best friend, and she always wanted me around, and I made her laugh, and she would always complain about how big a jerk her boyfriend was. And I was like, okay, she's going to dump him and pick me. And for 2 years, I turned down any other potential thing. I just was her friend zone guy, and it never worked out. We never got together, and she wound up moving off with that guy. And I was just like, okay, I can't be the only one that this has happened to. And that's what allowed me to write Just Friends. And I knew it had a shot of doing something, because when I sent it to my manager, the first thing after he read it, he goes, "Is this about me?" And I was like, "What? No. Why would it? How would I write about you?" But like, guys, the people that would read it would think, the friend zone, and that was their story. So I knew it had a shot, but it all came because of the emotion of feeling crappy after the non-sale of the first script, and tapping into that, and then writing something that that channeled.
So that's interesting, because so many people, like you said, they either belabor the thing that didn't work, but I think a lot of other people just give up, right? And you are talking about a form of resiliency where you're just like, I'm in a crappy phase. I'm not feeling great. What am I going to do? I'm going to create something new.
Right.
Right. And I think that is key to creative longevity for people, and certainly to build a career, right? Because for most people, it's not easy to build a career in the arts. And you managed to pretty much right out of the gate, which is astounding. But I think part of it, I wonder if part of it isn't that resilience that you have to just keep creating no matter what.
I mean, the joke I make is I'm not that good at most other things. Like, I was working in a bagel store, and I was working in a car wash factory where we made parts that go in a car wash. And my agent used to send me off on like 5 meetings a day when I would go out to LA, and he'd send me on like 5 general meetings, and he'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry about all these meetings." And I would say, "Dude, my worst day of screenwriting is better than my best day of car wash factory. So I am happy to do this if any of this could potentially be fruitful." So I mean, look, if you can give up, then it's not for you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, yes, nobody has to do a career in the arts. And it's great to be creative, and I always say, like, to people, like, separate it. Like, do you want to be creative as a hobby, or do you want to be creative professionally? If you want to be creative as a hobby, great. Paint a picture, knit, crochet, learn how to make great dinners. If writing is your thing, then write stuff. But you don't have to do it, and you do it when you feel like it. If you want to do it professionally, then you're going to get your ass kicked. You're going to get back up, and you're going to do it again. And you're going to write stuff that you don't want to write. You're going to be sometimes tasked with assignments that you're not thrilled about. My agent would call me up. He'd say, "Look, they're looking for a rewrite for this," and I'd be like, "Ugh," and then he'd be like, "Do you want to try for it or not?" And I'm like, "Well, it's money. They're paying for it. Let me see if I can connect to it in any way. If I could find a way in and make it palatable, then I'll go for it. Why not?" And and sometimes you get a job and you're like, "Great, I got the job," and then it's like, "Oh shit, I got the job." But that's what writing professionally is. It is getting knocked down, getting back up. The same way a prize fighter, like, you get knocked down, you get back up.
Yeah.
So.
So one thing that helps me through all the ups and downs and changes of being a professional creative person, a professional writer in both our cases, though very different fields, is I have a meditation practice. I make sure I go for a walk outside every day. I center myself in various ways. And I'm wondering if you have practices that help you maintain your connection to your center and your creative core.
Well, absolutely. Well, I was going to say, the most creative room in the house, I hate to say it, is the bathroom. Whether it's the shower or the toilet, you can think a lot in there, and it's a great place to just think of, sort of, think of nothing else but, just generate ideas. But also, yeah, walking is phenomenal. I've literally, one of my favorite stories is I got a call from a producer. They had a cartoon strip. It was called Zits, and they wanted to turn this Zits cartoon strip into a movie. And this was back in probably mid 2000s, somewhere around there. And I said, okay, I'm not super familiar with it. They sent me a bunch of books of the Zits cartoon. And I looked through the books and I was like, all right, it's cool, but it's 4 panels. It's a cartoon strip. It's not a movie. And they certainly don't, yeah, there's characters, but they, it's not telling one big story. So I got to come up with what they call a take. What's my take going to be that I could pitch and maybe get this job? So I had nothing. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go out, take a big walk around Prospect Park in Brooklyn. It's about 4.5, 5 miles total. I left the house with no idea. About halfway around the park, started to get a germ of an idea. About 3/4 of the way, I'm really starting to get some ideas. By the time I get almost around the park, I am sprinting for home because I've got to write stuff down.
Fantastic.
And I basically pitched that like the next day. I said, "Here's my idea," and the guy was like, "This is great. Let's write it up a little bit and put a little more meat on the bone." And then I wound up getting the job. So yeah, the walk around the park, I've gone to that well several times.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to go for a walk pretty much every day. For one thing, I work from home, right? And I need to get out of the house. But just that activity of putting one foot in front of the other and feeling the air outside and noticing all the little things on my walk changes my whole attitude, and it definitely refills my well. So I'm not surprised to find that it does that for you too. And of course, you live in New York. New Yorkers all walk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're famous for it.
We walk whether we want to or not. We have no choice.
Right.
Certainly not moving that car.
Right. Exactly.
Never get parked.
So I want to segue a little bit into, I'm going to get back to some of your creative projects, but I want to segue a little bit into just life in general, the life part of my podcast title, Magic, Creativity, and Life. You have a partner, you have a daughter, you have a dog and a cat. And I'm just wondering how you balance your creative process and your business process with all the rest of your life process. What's that like for you?
It's tricky because you're never off,
Right.
And it's like, look, I have a lot of notepads. I have a lot of, and or there'll be times where we're together and I'll be like, hang on, I need a second. And I'll have to squirrel away somewhere. And even if it's just the notes app on my phone, because I've train myself, if I have an idea, I have to write it down no matter what, because nothing is worse than that when you can't remember an idea you had and you're just kicking yourself for not writing that. So I constantly am writing stuff down or whatever. I bring my computer everywhere, even on vacation. But that's the good thing too, though. You can, my lifestyle, like with my wife, like I am home a lot and I can arrange to have time with her when most people are at their day job or whatever, and we're hanging out and doing stuff. And then I know I'm going to write later that night, or, nighttime is actually the best time to write. And then during the day is when I do a lot of rewriting. That became the balance of, trying to make time for your family. You're never off, but you also are not working that 9 to 5 or 10 to 6. That's like you are, chained to a desk or you're at an office or something. So in some ways it's very freeing. Like I joke with my wife, we don't go on vacation as much as other people because our day to day is actually kind of fun and we're together a lot. And it's not that, I don't have that overwhelming need. I have to get away from the office,
Yes. Yes.
Which is kind of cool. And then, the other good thing is I'm now doing a podcast with my wife.
Oh, wow. What's the name of your podcast?
So she's a big true crime fan. And so we wanted to get, we were doing kids educational stuff, but we also wanted to do some adult stuff, my company. And I had this idea of murders and mysterious deaths that happen while you're on vacation. And like two people will go on vacation, one will kill the other, try to make it look like an accident. Oh, they fell off the cliff, and try to collect the insurance money. So it's called Slaycation. And my wife and business partner, they research the case, and then they tell it to me. And I'm in the dark, so I can ask questions, make comments, make jokes if it's appropriate. And they're telling me the case, and we have a ball recording this. And it's so great. I mean, the only bad thing is she complains like she can't talk about the case with me. I'm not allowed to know anything. So
Right.
there's so many times when she wants to tell me some crazy fact that she found, or can you believe that? Oh no, I can't talk. And so she like squirrels away in coffee shops so that she's not home and not tempted to talk to me. But every 2 weeks we're the three of us are in the recording studio, and we have a ball. And Jerry and I, we've known each other for 30 plus years. My wife and I have been together for 31 years. Jerry has known my wife for forever. So the three of us have great chemistry and great camaraderie. So it's from just being such longtime friends. So yeah, that's super fun. And so that's a good way to be able to work in family, because now we're doing it together.
Yeah.
Recording promos. We're like this weird podcast family now. But it is important. I envy you for being able to get out of the house and walk every day. I say I'm going to do it, and then a lot of times I don't, because here comes this email. Oh, here's this thing. All right, I better deal with this. Oh, you know what? I just want to get one more thing done. And next thing I know, I look outside and it's dark, and it's like, I guess I'm not going out today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important for my mental and creative health and physical health, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. I need to force myself to do it.
Yeah, it's good. And again, speaking of I mentioned longevity and resilience earlier, and that's one of the things that I think helps my process around that too.
Oh,
Yeah.
the other thing that, the other word I use a lot is versatility.
Mm.
And that's been one thing that's helped me a lot. I've made a lot of pivots, but it's all within the same scope of things. I mean, at its core, like I was the kid that won contests in 7th and 8th grade writing stories. Then I went to film school and I made short films, but they were stories. Then I was telling, writing movies. They're stories. TV shows can be stories. So everything is, based around storytelling, but being versatile. The more things within your craft that you can master, or at least get good enough at, the better the easier you'll have to be employable. And even within our podcast world, it's like I'm writing promos, I'm writing songs, I'm writing all kinds of little things that have to be written just in the daily production of the podcasts and stuff, little intros. I'm doing all kinds of different types of writing every day. But being able to go from film to TV to scripted TV to quote unquote unscripted TV that still has a lot of writing. Apparently, unscripted TV is very scripted. And then to podcasts, and like people say, how did you transition to podcasting? It's like, because the problem with podcasting, or not the problem, but the thing that's different is with movies and TV, it's the mantra is show, don't tell. And with a podcast, there is no show.
That's right.
So how do you tell, but in a way that's not just telling?
That's right.
What's the most creative ways to tell somebody something? And, with our kids' educational stuff, I could just tell the kids that the sun is actually white. It just looks orange because of, the dust and the rays and stuff. But, instead I would say, hey, what color is the sun? Is it this? Is it that? Or true, false? Is it this color or that? And let them answer. Let them be interactive. Let them lean in and have to think about it and call out an answer, and then tell them the answer. As opposed to just telling them the way like a teacher might.
Right. I know in my own creative process, I also work on a variety of different projects. I write fiction, I write nonfiction, I write short stories, I write novels, I write long form nonfiction books. I write essays. I do podcasts. I've done music, right? I've have 4 CDs out. I used to be a dancer, right?
Amazing.
So all forms of creative expression, and part of what that helps me with too is it keeps it fresh
Yeah.
and keeps me interested, right? I never want my creative process to feel like a chore, even when it's about making a living, right?
Yeah.
So it keeps me engaged and it keeps me curious too. What is this new thing? Or what is that next thing? And how am I going to approach it? And, you also brought up teaching children. You've got all these children's science shows and brain shows. And that's invoking curiosity into those children too. So you have to be curious to help them be curious, right?
Oh, 100%. In fact, I mean, the joke I used to make, like, the first foray into the educational space was Brain Games on the National Geographic Channel, but that was for adults. Like, it was meant to be for adults. And the joke I would make with Jerry is like, your brain, I'm games. If I can turn neuroscience into something fun and funny that makes me interested, because I'm not a big science guy. I mean, I'm a writer, and I was doing comedy and stuff like that. But if I can find a way to make these things fun, then I think the audience will also be having fun, and that'll help the show. And so that was like the way we did it. And the thing that with that show that was interesting was, again, it was meant to be for adults, and the average age of a Nat Geo watcher was the audience member was 67. But then
Yeah.
when our show played, the average age dropped down to like 35.
Wow.
We realized a ton of young people were watching, including my own daughter, who at the time was like 8. And I would show her pieces, like unedited, edited pieces that, just random stuff. And she was captivated. And I was like, oh my goodness, I think kids are going to love this show. And it changed the way I was writing it because, I had an episode called Sex on the Brain and talking about how your brain reacts during sex and stuff. And I was like, nope, not doing that. Became an episode on attraction and what your brain finds attractive and stuff like that. And we softened it a little bit for knowing that kids were going to watch. And then from there, we wound up doing the show Brainchild that was on Netflix that was like just for kids, really. But families
Right.
and stuff. And now I do Who Smarted is a educational podcast. But the point is, it just you realized just how you have to bring fun, bring curiosity to these things. And so it's the same thing. Can I add jokes? Can I make a science show that has jokes that are actually funny? Not just
Yeah.
I was fortunate. I'm like an actual joke writer. So it's like, a lot of these shows don't have somebody like that on their staff. So it helped elevate our shows to a point where people are like, no, this is genuinely funny. And like parents write to us all the time. Like my kid listens to Who Smarted and then they go into school and I sit in the car and I finish the episodes.
I love that so much. That's so great. And, that's a perfect segue into the thing I want to talk about next as we start to wind down, which is magic and wonder, right? And creativity in the arts, for me, at its best, they help us think. They might change our minds. They might give us an escape. But for me, the thing I really love is when they invoke a sense of magic and wonder. And the way you talk about these shows, especially the shows like Brainchild or Brain Games, it really evokes that for me. And I know that you also have a show called Making Magic where you're working with sleight of hand magicians. And I'm wondering what that's like to work magic with actual stage magicians. What's that been like for you?
Well, it's funny. We worked, like, we had magic in Brain Games because the things that fool your brain teach you how your brain works. So
Right.
we did a lot of magic in Brain Games. And what was great was we had a guy named Apollo Robbins who could do sleight of hand. He was a renowned like pickpocket. Like he could literally empty out everything you have, steal your glasses, be wearing your glasses in front of you, and you don't even realize it. The guy was amazing. But the thing I loved that he did was whenever he would meet somebody, for the first time, he would do a magic trick. And his whole basis of how he saw you was your reaction to that magic trick. And he loved Jerry and I because we were freaking out. Like he did a trick and we're like, what? Oh my God. What? And we're like, he's like, here you guys are. You're the showrunners. You're obviously smart guys. And you're running around like a bunch of like giddy little schoolgirls freaking out over my magic trick. He goes, I did the same trick to one of the executives at the channel. And they just crossed their arms and said, no, how did you do that? And he's like, the difference, in vibe, he was like, I loved you guys from day one because of the way you reacted to the magic. And, other people are just like, okay, whatever. So yeah, people's reaction to magic is great. Look, working with magicians is awesome. And listening to how they need to be filmed. We had no cuts are allowed. We have to shoot it in one take. I don't care
Right.
how long it takes. We can't cut. You cut away, it destroys the illusion.
Right.
And we would just try to come up with really fun things that would look great on camera. The Making Magic is like a series we did that is on Facebook, where we worked with some magicians. That was super fun too, because you talk to the magicians and you get like, it's like, it was almost like the way we described was the comedians in cars with coffee, only for magic. So you
That's great.
talk to the magician, they do smaller tricks, and then they would do a big trick at the end. But also they would talk about their career, and they would talk about the things that worked and didn't work, and get some real insight into the whole business. I mean, look, they're liars. They're lying to you. They're saying that they're doing something that they're not doing. But the really skilled ones. I mean, there was nothing better when I would sit with a magician and just write a really cool intro into their trick. They'd show me their trick. I'd say, that's great. What's the intro? How do I connect it to the brain? What's a cool way in? I became really good friends with a whole bunch of magicians through that process, and they're awesome. It's really fun.
The difference between your response and the exec response is just beautiful. And it makes me think, in this whole conversation, your energy is so wonderful and your enthusiasm is beautiful. And I feel as if you and your work and your life, you're an anti-cynic, right? You're the antithesis of a cynic. And that has to be such great creative fuel too, right? You draw upon your life and your interests and other people's interests to feed your work and your creative process. And then it transforms inside of you, which is another magical process, and you offer it to us in film and television. How fantastic is that you've been able to make your life and your living this way for all these years?
Yeah, it's great. It's an unconventional. I mean, look, there are times where I'm like, it'd be nice to have like a steady paycheck, but I couldn't do it. There's so many like jobs, like it was one of the hardest things for me to do. Sometimes when I'm writing is like to come up with the real job that my character's going to have. It's like, I don't even want to write about it. It's like, I don't know. He works in an office. He does business. I don't know. Like, it's like so not my world. And I'm so grateful in one way for that. But at the same time, there's the, oh boy, okay, got to get that next thing going. I mean, you're always, working on one project, but you're also looking at like, okay, when does this end? And look, we got very lucky. Brain Games went for like 4 years. We didn't have to think about our next gig because we were just doing multiple seasons of Brain Games. But then eventually it's like, okay, this is going to be over. We got to find the next gig. So there's like, you have to have an appetite for that as well. There's like, the trickle of fear. My manager's company is called The Good Fear. And it's like, that's exactly what it is. It's like, there is that fear of what's coming next. Am I going to be able to, but it's like a good fear because it motivates you. It fuels your creativity. Oftentimes I'll tell my wife, it's like, okay, I wrote my way into this mess. I got to write my way out of it. So let's do it, and
Yeah.
something, the next thing comes and, I mean, look, the whole podcasting for us started because of the pandemic. We couldn't shoot anything. We couldn't
Right.
we couldn't pitch anything. We couldn't go on meetings. We couldn't, even entertain the idea of like what a TV show would be or whatever. So it's like, what can we do? Oh, well, we did Brainchild, and we had a giant list of emails because we created a free curriculum that you could get just by giving us your email that went along with our Brainchild show on Netflix. And why don't we get microphones and write? I can easily write up a kid's, science-y show, 15-minute long episodes. Me and, my partner does the trusting narrator voice. I do voices. My wife, my daughter, everybody, does voices. We got microphones and we just started this thing. And, I had no podcasting experience. I barely even listened to podcasts, but I brought what I knew from TV and storytelling and films and thinking like, what can I do that seems visual, even though there is no visuals? And it blew up. It blew up. The kids loved it. The families loved it. They started sharing it on Facebook, and our numbers went up and up and up. And our show became one of the top kids' educational shows in the world. And now it's 4 years in, and I wouldn't dream of giving it up because it's great to do. And, but yeah, that all came out of necessity because there was no shooting. There was no, pitching. So we had to do something.
And you figured out a way to channel your creativity into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. So to close, I'm going to ask you a question that could be big, could be small.
Okay.
It's up to you. In your life and your creative process and just living on this planet as a human being, what do you think is at the heart of you? What is your why?
Oh, that is a great question. We often say like our company, there's a lot of people just putting disposable or even worse, like just like negative stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I'd love to my why is I'd love to just create something that it doesn't have to be the most positive thing, but have a value of some sort. And if it's educational, great. I mean, so many people worked on our shows and they were so disappointed when the show was over, when Netflix didn't pick up Brainchild for another season because they didn't need to. They can spend money and then every year a new crop of 8-year-olds discover our show. But they were so disappointed that they were going to have to go back to these crappy reality shows and game shows and like stupid stuff that's like just putting a lot of garbage into the world. And we always felt really good that we were putting good stuff into the world. And even our true crime show, like we try to bring some levity to the horror. And people will tell us like it's their favorite true crime show because the others are so dark and they feel so bad afterwards. At least we temper it with some laughs and some takeaway at the end. I'm doing a new show about the Oscars where we look at the Oscars of the past, and it's me and this comedy icon Bruce Valanche, and we go over the winners and losers, and we just talk about tons of movies that might have been forgotten. And so now we're expanding people's like movie vocabulary and
right.
Their movie watching habits. So just, my why is like, I just want to put good stuff that will, resonate in a positive way. I had people tell me that they watched Just Friends and it gave them the confidence to tell the girl that they were just friends with that they were actually in love with them, or the girl telling the guy even. It's like we watched the movie together and we looked at each other. It's like, hey, that's kind of like us. Maybe we should date. And then suddenly they're dating. That's what I want to do. I mean, I could probably have done more if I didn't care so much about putting out something, a little smarter or a little, with a little more, I don't know, just a little more value. But yeah, that's what drives me.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. The way I put that is I try to put out signal instead of noise because there's a lot of noise in the world. And I think that's what you're trying to do too. So thank you for that.
Right. We try to be the salmon swimming up the stream against the current of crap.
Exactly. Well, thanks for joining me, and thanks to all of my listeners. Once again, this is Magic, Creativity, and Life. I've been talking with Adam Tex Davis, screenwriter, filmmaker, podcaster extraordinaire. And you can find out more about Adam and his work at atomicentertainment.com. And as always, you can find me at thorncoyle.com. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And if you would like to support this series and future podcasts, please join me at patreon.com/thorncoyle. That's THORNCOYLE. Have a creative and magical day.